deep inside, for what does have meaning, for gifts that you already own.
I just finished an amazing book that I highly recommend to all of you called The Bostoner Rebbetzin Remembers. The Bostoner Rebbetzin was the wife of the Bostoner Rebbe, and she tells, basically in the story, she tells the story of her life, how she was born in Poland, and she was born in a very, very wealthy family. So basically from the time she was a very, very little girl, she had servants always around her doing whatever she wanted. And at the age of 8, her mother remarried, and she moved to America. She moved to Cleveland, Ohio, where her mother married the Clevelander Rebbe. I never realized that there was such a thing, but I guess that there was a Hasidic Rebbe who lived in Cleveland, Ohio. So the Bostoner Rebbetzin grew up in the house as a stepdaughter of the Clevelander Rebbe. And she writes a lot of really wonderful things about her life. She writes about what it was like growing up in the home of such a holy man, the Clevelander Rebbe, and such a holy woman, her mother, the Clevelander Rebbetzin. But she writes a lot of things that, for me, were really, really hard to read. She writes just basically, especially about all the incredible amounts of housework that she had to do. They had no kosher food back then on sale in stores. So basically she had to, they had to get their milk from a farmer, and she had to boil all of her milk in order to pasteurize it. She had to make her own cheese, her own butter. She had to make her own noodles, all of their own bread. And they had to do all of their laundry by hand. You know, when I have to do housework, I feel like I spend so much time doing housework. I feel like overwhelmed by the amounts of housework and cleaning and cooking that I have to do. But I do basically less than 1% of what this 12-year-old girl was doing with her mother. And on top of all the housework that she had to do, it was even more difficult because she wasn't only cleaning and cooking for her own small family. Back then, it was really, really accepted that the house of a Rebbe was an open house. That meant that travelers or charity collectors who were traveling through, who needed a kosher place to eat, would just move in with them, and they would have these charity collectors and travelers who would stay with them for months at a time. Sometimes they would have 25, 30 people staying with them. And it meant that, here's this, young girl who was cooking and cleaning and, for crowds and crowds of people. Not only that, but, for me, we have guests on Shabbat, and I enjoy it. I like it a lot. But for me to have even one sleepover guest, like a person that I have to wake up in the morning and they're there and I still have to be hospitable to them, for me it's such self-sacrifice, I can't stand it. And here's this girl waking up with 25 overnight guests, constantly, every morning, cleaning up after them, taking care of them, dealing with them. Sometimes they weren't such easy people. Sometimes there were crazy people who would just move in with her, and they would move into her attic and stay there for months, and she would eventually have to call the police to get rid of them. So to me, that aspect of her life really sounded like a nightmare. But there's something interesting. For me, it was the most surprising moment in the book. When she was in her early 20s, her mother decided that it was time for her to start dating, to get married. And when her mother suggested the Bostoner Rebbe, her future husband, the Bostoner Rebbetzin said, well, he sounds perfect. He sounds wonderful, very learned, a real mensch. She says, but I have one question. She said, the most important thing for me in a husband, the most important thing for me, is that he will be willing to have an open house like we've had. I want to marry a man who values above all else the mitzvah of having guests, of hachnasat orchim. And I was reading that and I was just thinking, oh my God, what are you doing? You're going to get married, now you can be free, now you can take it easy. But this woman, it was amazing to me, how she saw that she had a goal, she had a priority, a mitzvah that was more important to her than her own comfort, than her own happiness even, that it meant so much to her, And, looking back, the Bostoner Rebbe and the Bostoner Rebbetzin, because of their policy of having an open house, today tens and tens of thousands of Jews have learned about Judaism, have religious homes because of them, because they have this open house. There's a famous saying that a good enough why can justify any what. That if we have our eyes on the prize, if we have a good enough thing that's inspiring us, a good enough goal that we're looking towards, then we can get through anything. I had a Rebbetzin who once said something to me years ago, but it's always stuck with me. She said, when you're having a difficult moment with your kids, she said, as a mother, there's going to be a lot of those moments. She said, like at 3 a.m, when you're up with a crying baby and you wish that you were sleeping, or when your 5-year-old is having a tantrum in the middle of an intersection, or when you just clean the house, you just worked hours cleaning the whole house, and then your kids start playing, and within half an hour, it's like all upside down again. She said, at that moment, at that difficult moment, she said, keep your eyes on the prize. She said, imagine your photo album 40 years from now. She said, imagine yourself, God willing, at your grandchild's wedding. Imagine yourself, imagine the wedding photo, said you and your husband are in the center of your grown children and your grandchildren. And all of those people exist because of you. All of those people exist because of your hard work, because of the thankless hours that you put in cleaning and cooking and taking care of and loving this family and raising them to be good Jews and good people. It's all because of you. You should keep your eyes on that photo so that it can get you through anything. So I want to bless all of us, at those difficult moments. At 3 a.m. when you're up with a crying baby, when your 5-year-old's having a tantrum in the middle of the intersection, when you just clean the house and after half an hour it's already upside down again, that you'll remember. You'll remember that photo. That you'll have your eyes on the prize. And I'll bless you with an amazing week.
It's here in the stillness, the quietest moments. It's here if we listen to our truth.